The playoffs are here. Now what do you do to give yourself the best chance to win? All right, the playoffs are here. It's week 15. Give yourself a round of applause. You've made it this far. Now what do we do to give ourselves the best chance to win the championship? And for me, that starts with closing that circle of trust. Now, I've talked about that a lot the last couple of weeks, the circle of trust, who's in, who's out. It's my evaluation on the stock report. And to me, at this point, stock reports are done. I'm done with those because the circle of trust has been established. There's really not anything that anybody outside of it can do to get back inside of it outside of being some random running back that gets thrust into a big role. That is the one caveat. Running backs that get thrust into a big role. This week, it's Rashaad Penny. So we will talk a little bit about that in this video, but we're done evaluating stock down the rest of the season. The circle of trust has been established. So the first thing you do to get yourself a win in the championship is dump dead weight. Let's face it. If you don't want to start them at this point, what's going to make you want to start them moving forward? I'm talking about Cortland Sutton managers, 73% rostered. Jerry Jeudy, 75% rostered. What's the upside there? What's the upside? What's the upside with those guys? I'm a Bronco fan, guys. I know there's no upside. Cut bait. There are better things to do with the roster position. I had Jerry Jeudy on my roster. I cut him 3 weeks ago. Nobody picked him up. What's that telling you? There's active managers on the waivers every week. Jerry Jeudy's still sitting there. And in the projections, he's not sitting at the top of the list. He's not that good. He's not worth a roster spot. And it has nothing to do with his talent, has everything to do with this offense. And that's why both of those guys, get rid of them. Another guy, Allen Robinson, 65% rostered. Cut bait, get rid of him. Waste of a roster spot. What are you doing? Kenny Golladay, 58% rostered. Waste of time. Laviska Shenault, 43% rostered. Waste of time. Cut bait. I would say all of these guys are guys that are on rosters that are done with the season, but it's not. I am actually facing a team in the playoffs this week that has both Laviska Shenault in his flex and Allen Robinson on his roster. That's two guys that should be gone. He should be acquiring different talent that's outperforming those guys, and not just right now, but have all season. All right? So that takes us to our second point, right? We're done. We're dumping dead weight. Get rid of them. That's the first step. Get rid of dead weight. We're done. It's the playoffs. What are we doing here? We're not juggling these. We're not waiting to see if they can bud into something at this point. You got to get rid of them because we have to get ourselves depth that we can use, right? So you have Laviska Shenault, Allen Robinson, dump them. For guys like Van Jefferson, now still 73% rostered, so harder to get, right? But a guy like Van Jefferson scored 3 touchdowns in 3 straight games. Stafford, 3 touchdowns in 3 straight games. Great matchups in the semifinals and the finals, Minnesota and Baltimore. Like, Van Jefferson's a guy that is great depth on your roster, somebody you could envision using in the playoffs, and that's what we have to acquire right now, right? We're acquiring guys that we can use in the playoffs. How about Devontae Parker, 57% rostered, high target rate and a pass-happy offense. Oh, he only had 5 targets last week. It's the lowest target share he's had all season. He caught all 5 of them. They were big catches for him. And this is a guy that has at least 11.2 PPR points in 4 of the 6 games he's played. He is somebody that you can envision using in the playoffs with a beatable schedule with the New York Jets, at New Orleans, at Tennessee. All of those are beatable defenses. All of them are back-end defenses when it comes to the secondaries versus the wide receivers. So those are all great matchups for Devontae Parker. How about Christian Kirk right now? 51% rostered. Here's a guy I've talked about several times, and his stock has fallen the last couple of weeks, but thrust back into the limelight. Why? Well, guess what? DeAndre Hopkins expected to miss the rest of the season. That does mean something for a guy like Christian Kirk. He has a good playoff schedule at Detroit, Indy, at Dallas. All of them are great matchups for wide receivers. Kyler, 6 games with multiple touchdowns this season. We saw what he did this last week. Multiple interceptions. That sucked, but they are going to pass the ball. Christian Kirk is going to get more opportunity, and he is a guy, once again, that you can envision using in the playoffs. That's the theme here. We're acquiring guys that we're envisioning using in the playoffs, like A.J. Green, 29% rostered, out there in 71% of leagues. DeAndre Hopkins injury, all the same things, right? And then coming off a game against the Rams where he had 7 catches for 102 yards. That's big time, even in standard. You got that 100-yard mark. That's big time in standard, but PPR, 7 catches, 102 yards. You do the math. That's a great day. So another guy that possibly has thrust himself into a guy that you can use as a flex or a wide receiver 3 in the playoffs now with DeAndre Hopkins on the mend with a knee injury. Then how about Amon-Ra St. Brown? Back-to-back games with 12 targets. Week 16 matchup with Atlanta. So that's the one thing we're targeting with him, right? His schedule right now, he has 1 game that you would think about really using him. I don't think it's week 15, but week 16 against Atlanta. Great matchups, got a great catch rate. We're talking about 26 catches on 32 targets over his last 4 games. That's pretty damn good. Great catch rate. Great matchup, week 16. He's a guy that you can consider using in the semifinals. In the running back area, not much out there, man. Really, honestly, it's Rashaad Penny, and I do want to urge caution on Rashaad Penny, right? Because we have seen flashes out of Seattle this season out of multiple running backs, but the fact is this has been an inept offense most of the season. So I do believe he is a guy that should be acquired. I did acquire him in one of my leagues, so he is on my bench as somebody, maybe he does come into week 15, performs well again. Has Detroit week 17, so definitely a guy, if he's looking good, enters in week 17, got him in the finals, a guy that I would totally be willing to deploy based on that matchup. You saw what the Denver Broncos did against Detroit last week. They've been a team in kind of disarray, only 1 win this season. And you can honestly say that Seattle has been looking for a bell cow. So there is a possibility Rashaad can grab that job by his horns, but there's also the ability he comes out and on the first snap pulls a hamstring and he's out because he has a major, major history of injury. So there is a true risk of, even if he does solidify himself in the backfield, there is a true risk in the playoffs of deploying this guy just based off of his injury history and his body not holding up to the NFL. But he is a guy that you definitely want to acquire. He is out there in some leagues right now, quite a bit of leagues actually. So if you're in the playoffs, you need to fill those roster spots. You vacating some of that garbage that you've been wondering why you've been carrying it all this time. A guy like Rashaad Penny should definitely be acquired off of waivers. And then other guys that you should be looking at, guys like Alexander Mattison, who's already had multiple opportunities this season. We do know that Dalvin Cook is still dealing with a shoulder injury that is not going to heal by the end of the season, so it's being managed. And it is possible that Alexander Mattison could get more work in the playoffs. And if he does, all of a sudden you have a guy that could be a league winner. So that's what you want to acquire. If you're dumping dead weight and there's not much on the wide receiver front, but you still have some guys that can really, maybe you see the opportunity could all of a sudden become a big time player in the final weeks, like a Sony Michel, a Tony Pollard. Look at what Zeke Elliott has been doing this season, and that is basically zilch. He's been terrible this year, but Tony Pollard right now injured. Can he come back? Can he can he give Dallas a spark, an offense that right now is not doing fantastic? How about Dante Foreman, a guy that led the Tennessee Titans in the backfield last week, but really it was not exactly what you were hoping for as far as touches. I believe he had 13 touches in the rushing game. He did get a touchdown in the opening drive. He came through for you in week 14, but will that role expand, or are they going to keep it right there around 13, 14, 15 touches and then split everything up with McNichols and Hilliard and just make it a real mess? But Foreman is another guy that in a run-heavy offense could possibly come through down the stretch. And then we also have the duo of Jordan Howard, Boston Scott. We've seen that Miles Sanders can't be healthy this year. They just haven't settled in on him being a true RB1. They really didn't go run heavy until he got injured. And this offense has not been, was best when it was Jordan Howard and Boston Scott. And let's face it, Miles Sanders, like I said, can't stay healthy. If he goes down, Jordan Howard, Boston Scott both have a great opportunity of being guys that come through as high-end flexes, mid-range RB2s down the stretch for you, guys that you can truly deploy. And Philadelphia doesn't have a brutal schedule or anything. And then finally, another guy in the running back list, Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, currently nursing a hamstring injury. It sounds that he is currently a limited participant in practice, so there is a possibility he plays week 15. But we all know what those hamstrings are. They are tricky. And so it is quite possible Ramondre Stevenson is the lead back in week 15, maybe even ends up being the lead back moving forward with the injury to Damian Harris. So he's another guy that you can add in as kind of a lottery ticket with a better chance of winning based on the current situation in the backfield. So all right, we've dumped our shit players, right? We got rid of them. The trash is fucking gone, right? Sorry, Jerry Jeudy. Sorry, Cortland Sutton. Sorry, guys, man. But right now, fantasy, you are fantasy trash. But we brought in the guys that are worth the damn. Do we still have roster spots, right? We need to make sure that we maximize our roster spots, right? What is it? What is it that we have left, right? We need to make sure that what's our kicker, right? If you got the number one kicker, all right, you're good to go. But some of us have maybe switched up the kicker a couple times this season. You're not totally sold on the guy. I personally, I think there's like, I don't know what, like 3 or 4 guys that you basically set it and forget it at that position. And if you're not setting it, forgetting it at that position, or you don't have a guy that's a set it and forget it, but you have been setting and forget it, now's the time to stop doing that. Now we need to make sure that we're looking for kickers with competent offenses with something to look for, right? Like right now, Arizona just lost. They are now in a dogfight for the top seed, right? So Matt Prater going against Detroit, week 15, a revenge game, right? Indoors for Prater, good offense. Feels pretty good if he's kicking at home. He's indoors, feels pretty good, kicking for a good offense, right? So we're looking at kickers. What are their matchups? What are the offenses that they are attached to? Because if a kicker has a great matchup but a shit offense, it still ain't worth a damn, guys. So you have to focus on that. If they're indoors, that kind of can be a plus, right? Because they don't have to worry about the elements. And right now, elements are a big deal. But kickers, if they're indoors, awesome. Also, if you have a kicker, he's not kicking indoors. You need to make sure that you are, and this sounds silly, but looking ahead in the weather report. Is it going to be really windy? Remember that game the other day in Buffalo with New England? Were they using their kickers? What if you had that? What What if you had a kicker in that game? Now, I think actually Folk came through, but the fact is that you need to, this matters, especially in the north where it gets cold. Winter's coming, guys. Winter's coming. And that means something in the kicking game. So you need to pay attention to that. Also, what are we doing? If you've been streaming DSTs, time to look ahead. You need to get next week's DST now. You need to be looking ahead. You need to make sure that this is all part of that maximizing the roster spots. We got dead weight. We're getting rid of them. Maximize the roster spots. Get an extra DST. Bring in an extra kicker. You don't do this during the regular season, but now it matters. It matters. How about if you've been streaming tight end, quarterback? It matters. Look ahead. That matters. Look ahead in your streaming. Look ahead in the weather forecast. Look ahead. Be diligent. Now's the time to be serious about this if you haven't been all season. You made it to the playoffs, but now's the time. You want to win. It's about being serious. Look ahead. Maximize those roster spots. Beware rash moves, guys. Don't try to get... You made it this far. Don't try to get cute, okay? Beware rash moves. Trust the players that got you there. That's the key. Trusting the players that got you here. I'm going to be honest. My roster, PPR, right? They're like, you can't have enough wide receivers. I was loaded on wide receiver. I had a handful of good running backs start the season. Christian McCaffrey went 0-4. Oh, fuck. I loaded up on every running back I could find. I got 4 wide receivers on that roster. One of them suspended because it's Antonio Brown. So I have 3 active wide receivers going into the playoffs in a PPR format, but I have running backs that are literally, that carried me to the playoffs. I started off 0-4. I'm in the playoffs, guys. You play it. Play to win, okay? Don't let anybody tell you there's one way to play a format, all right? I've been riding Mike Evans, Justin Jefferson, all right? And then I have been Elijah Mitchell here, a Melvin Gordon there, all right? Playing the waiver wire, loading up on guys. Like I said, I brought in Rashaad Penny on that roster. You just load up and you work it. But now's the time. Cut the dead weight, right? Like Antonio Brown's on that roster. I'm probably going to cut him. It sucks because I do think is a possibility comes back week 16. I don't want an opponent to get him. We are playing for some reason. This is a weird format. We're playing 2-week rounds. So we are playing all the way through week 18. So there's a chance it can come back and be helpful. I am also of the thought of Bruce Arians coming out and saying, oh, we're not sure what we're going to do with them. And that also might mean that even if they don't cut him, that he's not going to get a full workload coming out of suspension. So I don't know if he's a guy that I should really carry anyways. Cutting dead weight, right? We're talking about cutting dead weight. So, and there are guys. I might cut him for a KJ Osborne, guys. KJ Osborne might be coming on for a guy like Antonio Brown, because right now Adam Thielen dealing with a high ankle sprain. I don't think he's coming back week 15. I don't think he's coming back week 17 or 16. He might be coming back week 17 though, guys. But we have to think about these things. Like I said, there's that perfect overlap. Carries me, then I can get rid of him, bring in Antonio Brown. We're good to go for the final round of 2 weeks. But we have to beware rash moves. You have to just trust in the guys that got you there. And that's what I did. I loaded up with the guys that got me there, right? Like Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans. Just those 2 are set it and forget it. There's no point really in carrying a bunch of other wide receivers unless I'm going to use them in the flex. But my running backs that I acquired over the season are so good. There's no point. They're scoring anywhere from 16 to, 25 points every week. No point in go getting a wide receiver. So don't let anybody tell you there's one way to do it. But there are certain keys to winning. And right now in the playoffs, looking ahead, be wearing rash moves. getting rid of the dead weight, bringing in what you need to win in the playoffs. And that might be a little depth. That might be looking ahead on the DSTs. That might be looking ahead on the kickers, tight ends, quarterbacks, whatever it is you've been streaming. And don't let anybody fool you. DSTs matter. Kickers matter. You can squeeze extra points out of those positions. You can get wins because you cared about those positions. I'd like to thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Videos will be changing from here on out as we move into the playoffs, as I start to look ahead at 2022 already, as I start to think about other videos, the what to do if you didn't make it into the playoffs videos, how to win in 2022, because that's something I'm already thinking about as well. And I think that's a big part of how you set yourself up, how I set myself up to win championships almost every year. And don't let me fool you. I'm not like one of these guys that plays in 15 different leagues every year. I'm in 2 this year. I max out at 4. I'm in 2 this year. I have a real chance of getting that championship in that 0-4 start. A very legitimate chance. So I worked it all season long, and I came out with a solid core in the draft. Once again, thank you for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to keep your eyes out for the videos as I keep them coming.